Welcome to this week's Parking Network News. 28 car parks in Almere, the Netherlands, are now fully equipped with parking system doors from EFAFLEX. The project began in 2009 when the city decided to replace the old roll-up doors in the entrance and exit of the Quercus car park. The EFAFLEX doors are now fully customised, providing car park operators with plenty of options to make their car parks efficient, safe and clean. The Quercus spot control sensors and Birdwatch smart parking suite are now available in Lubarnechea in Santiago de Chile. The recently opened City Hall hosts a 3-level car park with more than 150 parking spots. The car park offers drivers parking guidance, video surveillance and license plate recognition at each parking spot, ensuring security, control and a better management of the parking facilities. On the phone today we have Chris Yiggett, Genetec's AutoView Program Manager, to talk about ALPR. Chris, my first question for you is how mature is automatic license plate recognition as a parking enforcement technology?
ALPR is actually quite mature. I think it's become much more prevalent now because it's become much more cost effective, more mature than it was, but we've been doing this for almost 15 years, specifically around parking. I think LPR has been around for much longer than that. I mean, it comes from either law enforcement or even fixed on poles for counterterrorism. But in terms of parking, we literally have hundreds of systems installed specifically for parking, and we've been doing this for at least 15 years, so I'd say it's quite mature by now.
And in what ways over that time has ALPR evolved, especially in the last few years?
When we started doing this about 15 years ago, the main focuses were much smaller in scale. Still prevalent, still widespread, but the ambitions of LPR for parking were smaller. Because vehicles have much more connectivity now and the infrastructure is there now, it doesn't really matter where you go. I mean, cellular connectivity is there. We're seeing now, an explosion in LPR and its potential applications because a vehicle is no longer autonomous. It can actually connect to a central database, pull information in real time. Because of that, I think that's changed the game. So one of the things that we've seen evolve is what we call pay-by-plate, but essentially people, whether it's using their meters, using their smartphones, or even demanding more real-time performance from their permit vendors, parking customers can now generate parking credentials in real time. This real-time information is put into a database. ANPR vehicles can tap into that database or that hub and get all that information in real time. And that makes the ANPR solution much more powerful. And that's one of the transitions I think we've seen significantly change the game, if you will, in the last 3 to 5 years.
And coming from yours and Genetec's experience, does ALPR work the same for parking enforcement across the world? And if not, what do you see as the differences?
In some ways, I think it's very similar because essentially there's some technology that reads a plate. But culturally, it's very interesting because every time I go to a new region, I'm always learning. There's always some new surprises that come to us. Like, for example, if we compare the model in North America, I would say a typical model in North America consists of a driver driving an ANPR vehicle. And the ANPR vehicle, I won't say it's autonomous because it still refers to a central database, but the vehicle on the spot will tell the driver as soon as a violation or an infraction is detected, and the parking enforcement officer will stop his vehicle and issue a ticket. The norm in Europe, I would say, is the vehicles tend to gather information, gather the plate reads, if you will, send that to a central database. The central database has some logic there that will determine what the infractions are, and then it will either dispatch an officer to go and give the ticket later on, or it can mail out the ticket.
And in light of the recent data leaks, is license plate data collected by ALPR secure, and how can agencies protect consumers' private data?
It's a very valid question because the reality is, depending who you speak to, there's two sides to this equation. The information is basically public information because anybody could look and see the plate. Where it starts to get private is, well, who does that plate belong to? Does it belong to this gentleman? Where does he live? That's the private information that you get from the Department of Motor Vehicles and whatnot. And what we see also is from one region to the next, the laws change significantly. I will go to one extreme where recently some legislation has been passed where the information cannot stay for more than a few minutes in the database, and other areas don't really have any sort of legislation, so they tend to hang on to it for a year, sometimes 2 years. What's important is we've created a back end that's very personalized. So I think any manufacturer who takes this business seriously has to give the option to the customer to say, hey, I will give you enough granularity and enough settings so that you can configure this to your requirements and to your local legislation.
And what do you see as the future then for ALPR?
You know, in terms of the technology itself, I just think it's going to get more and more reliable. Going around and getting data, we're constantly realizing there's more and more value in the data. Not necessarily the numbers themselves, but if you go down a block face somewhere and you realize you've scanned 30 cars, if you know the capacity of that block face is actually 40 cars, you can now pull out occupancy data. Because it can be tied into an overall real-time system, all of this can be controlled on the fly when you're using license plate recognition, in my opinion.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you so much for having me.
For more information about this topic, go to parking-net.com. That's it for this week's Parking Network News. Tune in next week for another episode. In the meantime, please check out our website and follow us on social media to stay up to date with the latest developments in the parking industry. I'm Tom Bissett. See you next time.